Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's 1883 Speaker Series. My name is Emma Pierkowski, and I serve as the Distance Student and Leadership Program Manager here in the Student Involvement and Parent Program Office. Each week, we invite a campus or community leader to talk about how today's student can develop their leadership skills as well as other advice regarding personal and professional development. We hope you learn some valuable lessons in the next 18 minutes and 83 seconds. For today's speaker, please join me in welcoming the Dean of Libraries and Information Science or Resources, Rebecca Bichel.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for making time to have this conversation today. I'm honored to participate in the 1883 Speaker Series, grateful to Mike and his team for organizing the event. I'll just begin by saying, it's a tad bit intimidating to be asked to speak about leadership on a campus full of leaders with your boss in a middle row. I'm sure each person here has opinions about leadership, and we've all had experiences, both positive and negative, to shape those views. So again, let me thank this team for giving me a chance to speak to an opinionated group of colleagues about a topic they probably know a lot about. It's a good way to start with a laugh. I do want to emphasize a couple of points. This is not an autobiography. It's a description of the leader, and more importantly, the colleague and person I aspire to be. I'm going to be sharing what I hope are some ideas that will inspire you also. I also want to ask that you indulge me and embrace for the next 18 minutes and 83 seconds a shared definition of leadership. When I think of, and today when I speak of leaders, I'm not just referring to a politician or a CEO or even someone with the dean in the title. I'm talking about all of us. I believe leadership is about buy-in and problem solving, optimism and passion for the impact of your work. We can all be leaders. We all should be leaders. In that spirit, I'd like to explore 9 leadership lessons and legends. It's not a fairy tale, but there are monsters, soothsayers, and even a Cheshire cat as our companions, so let's go. This is a shared experience. Number 1, leaders are monstrously ambitious. Right away today, we're confronted with monsters, but they don't get much cuter than this one. Before I talk about our friend here, let me clarify that when I say impactful leaders are ambitious, I'm not talking about personal ambition. I'm talking ambition for the goals and the impact that an organization can have. Impactful leaders are ambitious towards organizational goals. They believe to their core that an organization can achieve extraordinary things. Let's give that extraordinary goal a name, a BHAG. A BHAG is a big, hairy, audacious goal. The term was coined by Jim Collins in the book Built to Last, where Collins' advocacy is that great organizations must have BHAGs and acknowledge the hard work that must be invested in achieving them. A BHAG comes from a passion for doing something meaningful and impactful. You have to care deeply to dream up ideas this big. Ambition is towards a goal. It's directional, it's focused. But what's that really mean? In its simplest form, a BHAG is a bold vision, a bold goal. It's something worth working toward and that will require significant work to achieve. Examples. Most of us have heard the story of when President Kennedy in 1962 declared his BHAG, that before the end of the decade, the United States would have a person on the moon. Then, in less than that time, July 20, 1969, Neil Armstrong took those fateful steps. Now, I'd like to talk about some BHAGs closer to home. I watch ambition every day in our UND students. When they come into Chester Fritz Library to study, striving for an A, or just to do better on the next paper, better on the next exam. One of my favorite opportunities is to ask a student, what's your dream after graduation? They want to be teachers and engineers. They want to be artists and pilots, entrepreneurs and nurses, lawyers and physicians, professors and politicians. Never have I had a student say to me, I want a mediocre career. I'd like to skate through life. That's what I'm thinking. Our students are ambitious for the future they can create, the impact they can have. That is leadership. Leadership is ambitious. I'm inspired by this quote from director James Cameron. If you set your goals ridiculously high and fall short, you will fail above everyone else's success. So, impactful leaders are monstrously ambitious for organizational success. Thanks. Leaders are map makers. Leaders have a purpose. Back to the big hairy monster on the last slide. The last word of BHAG is goal, and it's absolutely critical. We've probably all met leaders who were bold, leaders who were audacious, maybe even leaders who were hairy. But without a goal, progress can't happen. A good leader then is a map maker. She has a destination in mind and is creating a map towards that destination or goal for the entire organization, with the entire organization. Looking at the Cheshire Cat's conversation with Alice in Wonderland illuminates this point. Alice inquires, would you tell me please which way I ought to go from here? The wise cat returns, that depends a good deal on where you want to go. She says, I don't much care where I go as long as I get somewhere. The Cheshire Cat notes, in all of his great wisdom, that it doesn't really matter which way you go. Keep walking, you're sure to get somewhere if you walk long enough. My takeaway is that without a goal, any path will do. It's important to understand that without an intentional goal and path, you're certainly going to arrive somewhere, but perhaps not your preferred where. So then, leaders help organizations craft pathways to a specific destination. Our earlier friend, the BHAG, in this case, is the destination. So impactful leaders are map makers. Has there ever been a more insightful guru than the dude? If the students in the room do not know who the dude is, I insist, after all of your homework is done, you enlighten yourself. Great leaders are for real. They are both authentic and humble. It was my first month in college. I was visiting home, and my mom, who never attended college, asked me what I was learning. I don't recall exactly what she said in that conversation, but as she was talking to me, I noticed she said something grammatically incorrect. I felt it was my duty as a 17-year-old seeking enlightenment to correct her, to help her, let's say, on her journey of self-improvement. Now, you can all probably imagine how the next few minutes looked. I don't remember exactly the grammar error, but I remember with absolute clarity my mother's response. She pointed her very long index finger very close to my face and said, "You better not get college rubbed up your nose." My mother was grounding me in a powerful leadership lesson. Be authentic, be humble. Authenticity is understanding what drives you and the ethics that ground you. For me, humility means accepting that you and your colleagues are human and make mistakes. Humility is saying, I'm sorry. Humility is truly accepting another person's apology. Humility is celebrating others' work. Humility is being a great follower. Leaders then need to bring their true best self to the role. That means authenticity, it means humility. Impactful leaders are for real. Leaders are collaborative. Leadership is unlocking people's potential to become better, says Bill Bradley. I know that when some people think of leaders, if you were to close your eyes and imagine a leader, you may think of a single individual who's larger than life. The best leaders are collaborative. They value others. They make that visible. They know when to follow. Leaders build strong teams. They invest in building other leaders. Leaders are followers. Leaders are teammates. Leaders are listeners and mentors. Impactful leaders are collaborative. Leaders are optimistic. How do you remain optimistic during times of challenge or uncertainty? By believing deeply in your purpose, your organizational purpose, and knowing that it matters. By believing in your colleagues. Two brother entrepreneurs started a t-shirt company in Boston in 1994. They were selling a brand of t-shirts called Life is Good. Their motto, do what you like what you do. Impactful leaders love what they do. I believe an academic library is the heart of a university. We democratize access to information and access to the tools to transform information in ways that makes the world better and makes individual lives better. We provide inspiring spaces that enable students and faculty to create, to study, to research, to collaborate. We welcome every member of our community with ideas that reassure and, yes, sometimes challenge us. We support our faculty in their publishing and then showcase that scholarship so all can benefit. We pass out tiny donuts for students. So on the bad days, they're reminded that they too are members of our community, that people care. And all that just on a Thursday. I love my job. I'm proud of what libraries do, what they have done, and am at the same time absolutely convinced that our greatest impact is yet to come. Soapbox, stepping off. Effective leaders need to focus on opportunities. Optimism attracts like-minded people. Optimism attracts positive energy. Leaders should be positive about the potential of their organization and potential of their colleagues. Impactful leaders, then, are optimistic. Leaders are resilient. I almost labeled this slide, leadership is failing, but it seemed to miss the tone somehow as far as critical inspiration went. Still, I want to make some points about the relationship between failure, success, and leadership. First, I wholly believe that failure is critical to success. Success is hard work. It's trying, it's succeeding, sometimes it's trying and failing. The hard work element is evidence that your goal is a stretch, that it's worth waiting for, that hard work is needed. People fail, people fall, leaders get back up and move forward. They try something else, they keep working. 2, let's just say it. Failure feels bad. It kind of sucks. I'm pretty sure it's the reason Dairy Queen's Peanut Butter Parfait was invented. While I believe wholly that mistakes have value, if you're willing and able to learn from them, sometimes you need a day or 3 to own the suck. Part of that can be moments of total self-pity. That's okay, it's human, it's part of the process. As long as ultimately you recognize it as part of the process and you get back up. 3, what's next after all the ice cream is gone? You get back to work, learning from what did not work, solving the problem. Here's a clip from a favorite movie about leadership, The Martian with Matt Damon. Show of hands, people who've seen it? Great. If you haven't seen this, I'll set the scene quickly. Matt Damon is an astronaut with a team on Mars. A storm comes, his team thinks he's been killed, and they leave without him. Hashtag spoiler alert, he isn't dead. But he is on Mars, alone, and in less than ideal circumstances. There's no ice cream, and he only has disco music. That, my friend, is a dire situation. Let's take a look at what he has to say later, once he returns to Earth, about how he managed in that moment. Yeah.
At some point, everything's going to go south on you. Everything's going to go south, and you're going to say, this is it. This is how I end. Now, you can either accept that, or you can get to work. That's all it is. You just begin. You do the math. You solve one problem, then you solve the next one, and then the next. And if you solve enough problems, you get to come home.
Failing is part of the process. It's not fun, but it helps us learn. It's critical for learning. Impactful leaders are resilient. Leaders are trusting. Whoops, my fault. There were two clickers, sorry. Leaders, one more time. Leaders are experiential learners. We talked about resilience after failure in the last slide. Now I'd like to talk more about a critical aspect of leadership, lifelong learning, and then specifically experiential learning. There are stereotypes that certain people are born leaders. I would challenge that. While various leaders have strengths, they must exercise those talents for them to become reliable leadership tools. I appreciate the metaphor of a leadership toolbox because it acknowledges that good leadership is work. It requires effort. Leaders become more effective in their use of a tool or strategy with understanding of the tool, practice, and focus. I'm specifically advocating for experiential learning as a growth strategy for leaders because the model acknowledges that learning never ends while prioritizing both experience and the critical aspect of reflection. This model also acknowledges that challenges are part of the learning process. We as leaders need to build a leadership toolbox, and that toolbox can't have just one favorite approach or tool. Help me out, please, by finishing this famous Abraham Maslow quote. If the only tool you have is a hammer, that was super loud. Every problem looks like a nail. If the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. I think that really sums up the critical need for having a variety of tools and recognizing that there are leadership tools to be used in different situations. So you need a variety of tools in your leadership toolbox, and you can't let them get rusty. Effective leadership takes practice. Impactful leaders are experiential learners. Leaders are trusting. I'm quoting Jim Collins again, this time in probably one of my favorite leadership books, Good to Great. Leadership only exists if people follow when they would have the freedom to not follow. Otherwise, it's just power. And power is not leadership. I appreciate that I just got some nods. I believe that for many, perhaps even most of us, challenges, I think for many of us, this concept maybe challenges some preconceived notions we have. But for any strategy we're working towards, there are multiple paths to get there. For most strategies we're working towards. And the fact that there are multiple pathways is an incredible opportunity to empower other leaders. Opportunities to explore alternative ways to achieve a goal allows you to step aside and encourage and enable others' leadership growth. You should, of course, have shared understanding of the goal. Perhaps another way to say that is a shared understanding of what success looks like. Then you step back and you turn over the process to those closer to it. Give space for experimentation. That's where growth and learning happens. Stepping back does not mean an absence of support. I believe another aspect of trusting your colleagues is fulfilling your responsibility to remove barriers and roadblocks to their success and leadership. Roadblocks can take many forms. They can be existing policies, they can be workflows. Make sure you're supporting other leaders as they move the organization towards the VHAG. Strong, successful organizations need many pathways for leaders to make contributions and authority to do so. Impactful leaders are trusting. Leaders are soothsayers. So we're all on the same page on this definition. I'm sharing the Merriam-Webster definition of a soothsayer. A person who predicts the future by magic, intuition, or more rational means. Here's a confession. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't do magic. But I do believe that leaders must always be looking to the future, thinking about future opportunities and challenges, using data to make educated predictions. Effective leaders must be willing to lead change. Effective leaders have to think about, dream about, even what the future can be. Leaders also need to acknowledge the challenge of organizational change. This cartoon effectively presents this concept, right? So you've got the first screen, and the leader presumably says, who believes in change? And everybody's like, rah! Second slide. Who believes that you need to change? And they look at her like, what are you, crazy? Absolutely not. Hands are down. And then, who's willing to lead change? And the bench is empty, right? Change is scary because it's unknown. Change can feel like a criticism of how things have been. Many people, and therefore many organizations, have a bias towards the status quo, good or bad, because it's known. Leaders also need to help colleagues who are struggling through change. They need to see the future opportunities and help others see them also. Impactful leaders, then, are soothsayers, which brings me back to the beginning. Thank you for your time and engagement today. I'm grateful for it.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you all for coming today. Join us next week as we welcome the Vice President for Marketing and Communications, Melanie Linder. Have a great rest of your week.